Alright, let's try that again. Hopefully it doesn't get choppy, that type of thing. I don't know if it's an internet connection issue or what, but we'll wait for people to kind of funnel back in. I'll kind of do a little bit of repeating myself. We'll hopefully get through this and it'll be working okay. Yeah, so like I was saying, plant sale going on right now. November plant sale, I think, is right above me, and you can put that in at the checkout and get 20% off all plants. Just checking more stuff here. This live stream is going to be about an hour, and just making sure all looks like it's going okay. Let me get back to the chat. All right, so while people are funneling in, go ahead and like this video, do all those things we normally do, share, that type of thing, and let's try and get everyone back into the same place. I apologize. It's never good when things go wrong. Where was I going? So live stream on Thursday. Yeah, going to be a long one. Going to be lots of deals. Maybe we can have some fun things happening. Yeah, so, all right, let's jump in. I know some of the questions from the other chat that I wanted to answer. So someone asked, can I use a shop light to grow plants? The answer is yes, totally. I've done it a bunch, and oh, I did lose my setting for the 60-second cooldown. Anyway, but yes, you can totally use a shop light. I've done it before a million times. The color of the light isn't very good to look at, but it'll grow plants just fine, especially like the Lowe's, or not Lowe's, like Costco, basically the LED shop lights. They work amazing. They're a lot of power. It's just the color's not too good, but it'll totally work. Let's see here. Pennywort growing tips, I would say it likes to be a floater much more than it does being rooted. So you can root it. It's a stem plant that really wants to float the whole time, and you can keep propagating or planting each node, but it's real labor intensive. And I saw, I think on Ted Judy's channel, he was playing with some Hydrocaudal triparta, which is kind of like a super miniature version of Pennywort, and he laid glass on top of it so it would grow underneath it. I thought that might be a good idea. I'm interested to see how it comes out, because I didn't have time to watch the whole video, but I saw that and said, hey, that might be a trick, because the glass would let the light through. I don't know about delivering nutrients and things like that, but yeah. So keep in mind, everyone, this live stream is dedicated to plants, and so there's things here like questions about red-eared sliders and stuff like that. You're just going to have to ask that on the channel, and I'll answer it in the comments later, so we can keep this on topic. Oh man, my plant still got cut off. I must have started talking before it went live. But 20% off all live plants on the website. It goes for 24 hours. And the goal there was to give you guys a chance to get all these plants before they sell out on our Black Friday sale in the store. Because what's going to happen is, I had to order all the plants. No plants are really going to ship to land after Black Friday. And so I'm not going to say we're going to be sold out, but we'll be drastically reducing the amount of plants we have until probably that following Monday again. So let's see here. Is Java Fern okay to be not in the gravel but on top of it? From Flynn's Fish Forum. Yeah, definitely. In fact, you want the rhizome, which is, I don't have anything to replicate a rhizome. Let's use this Aquarium Co-op measuring spoon. If this is the rhizome, so like the thick part where all the leaves come out the top and then the small roots go down below, this part right here has to be above gravel. Otherwise, if it goes below the gravel, it rots and all your leaves come away. So Java Fern can do okay in the gravel so long as you don't bury that. I find it really thrives though on wood or rock. I don't know why it does so well there. Sometimes it does okay in a nutrient-rich substrate as well. But I've always had best growth. And I don't know if it's just a flow thing, like more water goes through it or something, but I feel like I always get the best growth when it's attached to something. Do I ship live plants to Canada? I don't, and that's because customs and things like that, it gets real dicey, so we don't do that. Dom, the fisherman, says, what are the pros and cons of having plants in your freshwater tank? I would say the biggest pro is they look amazing, right? So that's I think most people can agree that a really nice planted tank looks really good. Now, let's say you only have some moderate skills, and so you're just going to have lots of green plants. It's going to look better than not having them. And then the benefits, in my opinion, if you get a really nice growing aquarium, you will grow very little algae typically, assuming you get it in balance. And it's going to consume lots of nitrogen for you. Plants can take out heavy metals. So if you're on a well and you have some things in the water you don't really want, you can filter that out with plants. And so let's say you were on well water and you had very high levels of calcium and your pH was 8.0 and things like that. You could set up an aquarium with live plants and not do any water changes for, let's say, a few months, and get the pH to start crashing down. Let's say you get it down to 7. Then if you only do like 10-20% water changes in that aquarium every month, even though that's at 8.0 pH water and calcium, it would just keep it probably around 7.4 or so, and you could keep soft water fish that way, which that's kind of a cool way to do it. And the reason you can get away with so few water changes is because the plants are going to consume all the nitrates and things like that. So that's kind of one way people can soften their water without using an RO unit, because the process of making, like basically taking ammonia to nitrite to nitrate, in that process creates acids, and that's why long-term tanks get more acidic, and that's what leads to old tank syndrome. And we can also use that to our advantage. So as long as we're monitoring the whole process, we can control things. That's what nature kind of does, is that's how water either gets super duper hard or super acidic or things like that. So let's see here. Want to grow plants, but sand near the filter turning black. Any ideas? Could be black brush algae or black beard algae. Could be some cyanobacteria starting, which is, it's also called blue-green algae, which it is a bacteria, and it's more prevalent, in my opinion, in a sand tank than without. That's because there's less flow typically. So see if it's that. If it is, use some erythromycin or something to get rid of it. But in general, super duper fine sand makes it harder to do plants, not impossible. And there's some plants like Vallisneria and stuff that can thrive pretty well in it, but there's also other plants that just don't do well, like in my opinion, Amazon swords or sword type plants can struggle pretty hard just because they're such heavy root feeders and they're so cut off with dense sand they can't really get a lot of nutrients. So you can always, let's say you did have a full sand tank, you kind of treat it like an African cichlid tank. You'd use some Val, you'd use Anubias, Java ferns, you'd attach the Anubias and Java ferns onto wood and rock and stuff like that. And let's say you had a bare bottom aquarium, like let's say the aquarium behind me had nothing in it. You can do potted plants where you get like a terracotta pot, plant stuff in there, you can put it on wood and rock. And so there's always an option, even if you have fish that eat plants, or turtles, you can either build a cage around the plants, or you can use pothos that's growing out of the water, or bamboo, and you can kind of put stones around it so they can't, like let's say a turtle's biting the roots, you could put stones around it. There's usually always a way to make it happen. It's just whether you actually want to go through the work to make it do it. And I realize sometimes you're like, well, that sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, I tend not to want to do a lot of work either. KG Cichlid says, tips on burying crypts in water sprite. Even though it's nice on the surface, I prefer to bury it. Should I leave a little bit of the root showing? Yeah, I think so. In your first initial planting of a plant, of you just got it, it's in your possession, you really can't kill it by not planting it deep enough. But if you plant it too deep, you could definitely kill it. And plants have what's called a crown. So if this was the plant, let's say, and these are all roots down here, and then we had all the leaves coming out of the top up here, this is what the crown would be. And it's kind of a whiter part, so you've got usually really white roots or whiter yellow roots, and then you've got kind of a whitish greenish right here, and then you'll have green foliage or red foliage or whatever it is. Now this little bit different color that's kind of right here, if that goes too deep, what happens is all the foliage melts off and this just dies back. Whereas if we go a little bit shallower and we've got a little bit of the roots showing, it tends to do okay. And especially if the plant propagates by runner or something like that, it will set its own depth from then on and be super duper healthy. But you're almost better off going a little bit shallow than too deep. And a lot of times some planting tweezers and stuff can really help with that. By the way, we got some of those up on the website. And so you guys can order that. We finally brought in a good line, which is the Fluval line. And the other line we carried in store couldn't be sold online per manufacturer. But the tweezers, especially like curved tweezers, really help with that because you can kind of get it in there. The roots get a really good hold. And it's not making a big hole with your fingers that then backfills too deep. So you can really be precise in how deep you want it to go. So yeah, that's how I would do it. Water Sprite, it's fairly easy. I would say easier than Crips and Vals. Just because with a stem plant, man, I really should have... Maybe next time I do something and I know... If I'm going to start planting what we talk about, I'm going to get props. Like I could have live plants in my hands right now. But a stem plant is just this big long stem with leaves coming out of it, right? Well, you can cut that anywhere and turn it into two plants. And all we gotta do is break off the leaves and shove the stem down into the gravel. It will grow roots. So you almost can't bury that one too deep. That being said, if you have this big established pot of Water Sprite that you just got off the website or something, if you plant that too deep, it's gonna struggle pretty hard and it will root. But it's going to go through a melt back and stuff like that, just like the stem that you cut and made a new one will do also. But that's why stem plants, when you see them, they have all these little roots coming off, because that's how it propagates. Eventually it breaks off in the wild, a fish bit it or something, or it got hit by the current, or a log or branches floating down the river and grabs it with it, and that's how it makes a new one. Let's see here. Duckweed from Flynn's Fish Forum. Friend or foe? For me, it's a foe, but I do know that the grass is always greener. Like, if I couldn't keep duckweed alive at all, I'd be going, man, wish I had duckweed because my goldfish love it and stuff like that. That being said, it's kind of an inevitable, you'll get some at some point in your career and you'll have to decide whether you like it or don't like it. And even if you do have it, you should be... monitoring it and making sure that it doesn't overgrow and cut off oxygen. So if you look at the video I did about oxygenation in the aquarium, we actually found out that duckweed covering like 60% of its surface really lowered the oxygen level in that tank, which I wouldn't have thought it was that drastic, but testing, so I had all the duckweed there, tested it. Man, it was really low. Moved the duckweed to another aquarium, waited a few days, and then it was really low when it was previously very high. So while that's not testing 100 aquariums, it was enough for me to go, wow, I see cause and effect. Had a problem, this tank was okay, swap the two, and then instantly that tank has the problem, this one doesn't anymore. So, let's see. Anubias grows slow, Flourish should be fine for it. Yeah, for the most part, some of the super duper slow growers like Anubias and Java ferns can survive with almost no fertilizer at all. But I find a lot of people are like, man, it grows so slow. Like I get one leaf every month or two. With fertilizer, and if you did fertilizer and CO2, you might get a new leaf every 2 or 3 days. And so that's the difference. But for a lot of times, like in this aquarium, I wouldn't want a leaf every 2 or 3 days. That'd be a problem for me. So you got to know what you're trying to do in your aquarium. How to take care of Amazon swords. So they're heavy root feeders. So when you get the plant, most likely from a store, it's going to be grown out of water, which means, like Florida Aquatic Nursery or something like that, they're going to grow them on big grow tables, and they're going to be kind of look like a plant you'd buy from Home Depot. They're going to be in a little pot, and they'll be growing out of the water, and you're going to go, weird, that looks so weird. But you'll get it at home eventually, and all those leaves were meant to be supporting themselves out in air, grabbing CO2 out of air, getting sunlight, and things like that. The minute we put them underwater, they feel like they're suffocating. So all those leaves are going to die back, and they were kind of a little more round. They're going to come back in a little more spear shape, and that will be the submerged grown leaf. And to do that, it's going to consume the nitrogen out of the old leaves. They'll turn yellow and then transparent. And then if we're not providing enough nutrients, which usually is in the form of some kind of root tab or enriched substrate, something like that, it's going to continue that cycle forever. Now, if you do feed it enough food, an Amazon sword gets to be kind of a 3-foot plant, and it'll send out what's called a spike and make tons of babies and runners, and you'll have more Amazon swords you know what to do with. It's kind of like having a spider plant in your house. Like, you get it at the beginning, it's doing okay, and then pretty soon it's making millions of babies, and every relative you know has more spider plants than they want, and it can become a problem. But I would choose having way too many than killing it. So yeah. Is plastic plants better than live plants? In certain situations, I could see an argument where it would be. For instance, if I was breeding something that I couldn't let snails get into, maybe plastic plants make some sense. Instead of plastic, I actually like silk plants better. But also for things like severums and known herbivores, I might use... no, I wouldn't. I would just do wood and stuff. But that would be the situation where I would use it, would be silk plants in an herbivore tank. And I have seen it used effectively sometimes in some very large display tanks in like public places. So for instance, let's say the tank's like 10 feet by 5 feet front to back by 4 feet tall. It's really hard to get light down there. They actually mix some live plants and some fake plants. So that's, could be useful. But in general, you're missing out on all the good benefits of a live plant when you're using either silk or plastic. And there's some bad things about plastic too. Like they can break down. I've had to cut pieces of plastic from the plants, like fake kabamba basically, where it's just all spiky. I've had to cut that out of the gills of African cichlids for customers and clients before. Same with goldfish. Like it just gets wedged in there, and it's almost like it's a hook because it's like barbed, right? And so there is some downfalls to them too. And I wouldn't, there's probably downfalls to live plants too, like the fact that it costs more money, it needs fertilizer, needs some skill. Technically, they could all die if you didn't give them any light. There's some some downfalls, but I think overall do way more good than harm. What are the best plants to put with a red-eared slider? They pretty much eat anything they can get their hands on. So if you have another aquarium, I like to grow lots of water lettuce and stuff like that and feed it to them. If the red-eared slider tank, if you can get a sump going, or like the hang-on back filter, it depends on how the tank is set up. If you have an above tank basking area, you can use a normal hang-on back, and you could grow bamboo out of the back or pothos out of the back of that. I do want to shoot a video eventually where I show you plant it and then you build a cage around all the plants, and anything that comes through the cage the turtle can go and eat, and it's a super good food source, and you're still getting the benefit of them growing and cleaning the water for you. Let's see here. Freshwater tropical fish breeder says, why crypts? They melt are to spread out and do anything with them. Look odd if not used perfectly, and are not consistent in color and leaf structure. Why are they a good plant? Mostly because they're so easy once they're established in your aquarium, and they grow really slow. So, in my opinion, most people that have done plants for a long time, they don't want super fast plant growth. It's the people that are newer to the hobby, they're trying to replicate it, but really, you kind of set up the aquarium the way you want it. You just kind of want it to stay that way. Go, oh yeah, just keep looking awesome. And crypts are a great way to do that. They do take a long time to grow in, though. There is no doubt about that. And there can be crypt melt, but I think crypt melt's a little unfair because most plants melt. And it's, most plants are going to be growing immersed and things like that, and they're going to melt back. But in general, might be my favorite plant. I like Anubias a lot too, but I love cryptocorns. And there's a lot of variety, and it's one of the easiest plants to get different shades of color. That's another thing I hadn't pointed out was it's really easy to grow a lot of different green plants, but starting to get into some of those bronze, Florida sunset, a little more of the reds, in a low light plant is not easy. So that usually is one of the reasons why you'd incorporate crypts. Is Java moss good for shrimp? I would say it's real good for shrimp. It creates a kind of a jungle gym for them to be crawling on and eating infusoria and little bits of algae and stuff off of it. And it provides them a lot of cover as well. It makes them feel safe. So Java fern in general is pretty good. Christopher McCoy says, speaking of kabamba, could you talk about them? Yeah, they're a real fast-growing plant, kind of a stem plant that has like little, it's almost like little pom-poms on it as it goes up. And depending on how much light you have is how far between the nodes. So if there's a pom-pom here and a pom-pom here, tons of light tends to be more compact. Not a lot of light. It really reaches and tries to get as far as it can towards that light each growth segment. And it comes in a green form, a purple form, and a red form. In Washington State, where I am, technically the only illegal one is the green form, but they don't really want to see the purple form or the red form in my store either. So I just don't carry it out of, I know it's going to be just as invasive as the green one. So, I mean, every once in a while I'll find its way into my store, you know, a purple or a red form, but not very often, and I don't order it very often. Joel Gillett says, Corey, do you think scissors are much better than pinching plants when taking cuttings? This is a tricky one. So the answer is yes. I think a really sharp pair of scissors, like when cutting up a Nubius and stuff like that, is way better than me just going snap. That being said, in the fish room, if I've ever got my hands in the tank and my scissors are across the room or I don't know where they are, I'm probably just going to do it by hand. If I've got the scissors right there, I'm totally going to use them because I do believe a clean cut is easier on the plant than a snap. And I do like it for trimming down roots if I need to trim down roots. Like I was trimming some cryptocorn roots not this morning, but earlier today when I was planting a tank. So I do like a crisp, clean cut there. But if I only had $20 to spend on a planted tank and I was new to the hobby, would I invest in scissors right away? No, I'd probably invest in another plant, fertilizer. I would buy tweezers before I would buy scissors. But if you're in a situation where you can afford multiple tools and things, sure, I think it's worthy to have a pair around for sure. And then those scissors, being that they're stainless steel and they're super sharp, I've used them for surgery on fish before as well. So they're a good thing to have around with your aquarium, you know, just in general. So I do use them quite a bit. Let's see here. Scroll down a little bit. Joel Gillett, again, are plants sold as tropical or cold water? Just a marketing technique, or do some plants have legit temperature requirements? Yeah, so there definitely are cool water plants, and then plants that can go a little warmer. I think most plants really like to be around 68 to 72 degrees, so that's almost what we consider a cool water aquarium. Most plants will do just fine at 78. And then you'll watch some plants not be able to handle kind of 80 to 86. That's why people struggle a lot with discus tanks that are planted. But in general, I think most plants prefer to be cooler. There are a few plants that really thrive in cool water that can't handle the temp. I want to say off the top of my head, like Isoscelesis, the octopus plant. Like it's a weird bulb plant. There's a few that really, that are in the hobby, because not a lot of them are in the trade because they don't do well at tropical temperatures. But like if you go and collect mosses and stuff, or any plants out of the wild near you, unless you live in like Florida or something like that, most of those do fine year round out in the cold, but the minute you get them to the aquarium, they just shut down from being too warm. So that's why it can be really hard to collect any plants out of the wild like in the US, and most of these plants come from kind of tropics because we're keeping tropical fish. Let's see here. Aren't Miarmo balls just algae? Yeah, they're a type of Cladophora algae. And yeah, so it makes them very easy to grow. It also could spread a little bit of that Cladophora algae in your aquarium. People will also kind of cut them apart and make carpets out of them. It kind of looks like a lawn in front of your house. But yeah, it's just an algae, and it can be useful. And yeah, that's all it is. Kevin Walden says, how are there so many fish stores in my area with strict aquatic rules? Mostly, I think, because the Pacific Northwest is kind of into nature. You know, we're not like Portland, where we're really into nature down there, but in general, I think we're into nature over here. And we also we're kind of a melting pot, so we've got a lot of different cultures here. And so I think that helps keep getting the plants rooted, you know, like the aquascaping rooted in Washington / the whole West Coast, really into aquascaping, where you kind of get to the Midwest, not so much. East Coast, there's some clubs, but I would say in general, like in my personal club that I'm a part of, I think everyone's got a planted tank, if not multiple planted tanks. If you were to ask how many had African cichlid tanks, I bet you it's less than 10%. So it's directly opposite than a lot of the country. Let's see. Have I seen underwater hairy caterpillars on plants? I haven't run into that. I've run into some weird, like, dragonfly larvae and some other weird bugs before. They're definitely, like, whenever a bug, like if I'm working with plants and a bug grabs onto me, you better believe I kind of go, oh my god, you know. And there's been some weird, creepy, crawly, like centipede things I've found before that, you know, had to leave my existence because they were crazy. But in general, nothing too bad. Let's see. David says, I would love to grow bamboo in a tank, but don't know where to start. You literally got no experience with plants. Well, bamboo would be a great one because it's super duper easy. Basically, the requirements for bamboo, this is assuming it's like a lucky bamboo, like the typical bamboo. I know I've got some right out there. In fact, maybe I'll grab it. I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got some bamboo here. Let me make sure it's going to be on the screen correctly. But, so I only buy bamboo for my store in at least 22-inch long lengths, and that's because your average aquarium is at least 17 inches, something like that, for even just a normal 20, and a 55 is a little bit taller, and then like a 180-gallon tank is going to be 2 feet tall. So the reason being is all of this up top here, the leaves have to be out of the water. You put this underwater, this just dies off in about 3 or 4 months. You can have all the stem here in the water, and this is all the roots, so it'll get a nice orange big root ball going to it. And this was just in one of my bucket filters out there on one of the turtle tanks with the terrapin and the red-eared slider. But you basically just put it into the water, it'll root out, and it's going to suck up nutrients for you and grow very slowly. And this is a curly piece of bamboo. They also come in just the normal straight. And yeah, so it's, you know, I wish someone would do a test, and whenever I say that, I always think it should be me, but I don't know if I have time. I would love to know, like, per foot of bamboo you have, it removes 1 nitrate a week or something. That would be super useful, but I don't know that answer. And so yeah, you could buy it from almost anywhere. You know, you might be able to find it at the corner store. You're not going to find huge pieces of it, but I've seen it in gas stations even. So the trick is, I'm going to set this down. If you've only got a piece that, let's say, is 4 inches, which you can buy on Amazon and stuff like that, and they're wicked cheap, right? The problem is, you don't have an aquarium that's only 4 inches short. So you kind of treat it like a mangrove in salt water. And being that you're probably new to live plants, you might not know about mangroves either. But the trick for it is, you get a piece of styrofoam, you poke a hole in it, and then you take your piece of bamboo and you just put it through the hole, and it's going to hold it. And eventually, as the bamboo grows longer, you can keep inching it towards the substrate. And eventually, it'll be in your gravel, and you'll have a nice long piece of bamboo. Is that going to take a ridiculous amount of time? It totally is. But you could do little ones on in your hang-on back or something like that. And then I used to sell them at the store when I had more time, but I would take, I think I've got it right here. Yeah, this will work. What I used to do is take like a suction cup, made for a heater or or canister output or something, and you could take like 2 or 3 pieces of very small bamboo, and you could like jam them in there, or you could zip tie them to this, and you can just move this along the back of your wall as they grow. And so that'll work too. And I used to sell those, and it made it real easy for people. And so you don't even have to put aquarium fertilizer or anything like that in there. Like it does help a little bit, but you'll start getting the benefits right away, which is awesome. Let's see here. How many people attend our local club every meeting? It's somewhere between probably 60 and 110. I would say. Like, I think the plant auction, so they had a plant auction this month, which me and Bob didn't attend. I had to work. But I want to say, so active bidders was 87 active bidders or something like that, with obviously more people in the room, because like if me and my wife go, if I'm an active bidder, I'm one of the 87, but she's not part of that number. So there could have been way more people in the room. Might have been 150 people in the room, but 87 people were actively bidding on items. So we, in my opinion, have a pretty stout club going on right now. Let's see. The Bachelor's Planet Aquarium. What's the best red beginner plant that does not require much caring? I'm planning to have one. If I gotta pick one, without a doubt, it's the dwarf aquarium lily. You can buy them in the bulb packs. You can buy them just as the plant itself, but it's basically a bulb plant, so it's got most of the nutrients it's gonna need right there. Once it sprouts, boom, you're gonna get these red leaves, and then when it gets all the way to the top, it's gonna have kind of, well, if you saw on Instagram, if you guys are following me on Instagram, you saw the big lily pads in Murphy's tank. But it makes these big lily pads. They're kind of purpley and awesome, and I know a few people that watch this definitely have bought those from me, and they're getting the same experience. They're a great beginner plant, can grow in almost anything, like even a beddable without a light type of deal. Like, they're awesome. They're not the most hardy plant when it comes to like a fish eating on them though, so if you wouldn't want to try with African cichlids, but any community tank or anything real gentle for sure would be awesome. Let's see. Too Hot says, I have quite a few Sagittarius. Would that be enough for shrimp? 15 plants in a 15-gallon. Yeah, I think so, because it's going to bounce and spread around. I would make sure that tank's up and going for 4 to 6 weeks at least before adding shrimp, so that way the plants are really thriving. There's an ecosystem going. There's a little bit of algae in there, microorganisms, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that would fill your tank out for you. The Wick says, hey Corey, any advice on brown algae? It's wreaking havoc in my planted tank. So I'm thinking it might be diatom algae. That can be real prevalent in a newly planted tank. A lot of times in the substrate there's silicates and stuff like that kind of fueling it. But it's very common in a newly established tank, and it goes away over time. The things that eat it really well would be like Autosynclus, snails are really good, bristlenose plecostomus. Like if it's on the glass, a bristlenose works awesome. If it's on your plants, snails and Autosynclus work really well. Shameless plug for me, go check out my video on algae if you haven't already. It's in my little playlist section, Algae, Plants 101, and you can identify the type of algae. That's the biggest thing I think people are messing up on, is figure out the type of algae you have, then figure out how to address it. Because a lot of times people say, I have algae, and there's so many different types that you can't just throw one thing at it and hope it works. You got to really identify it. So watch that video, make sure it's like a brown diatom algae and not like a brown hair algae or something like that, and go from there. Let's see. My Apontigitans are good filtering the tank, but always have small particles on the leaves. My bristlenose and other fish don't help clean it, and it's dirty. What's the easy way to clean it? Okay, that's, in my opinion, a relatively easy one. Typically, when you have a lot of debris sitting on plant leaves, it means that your circulation in your aquarium is not adequate. The goal, personally, for me, in my planted tanks, would be that all plants would be moving a little bit. So if we take a look back here, you can see these are waving, correct? We look at the leaves, they're moving a little bit. Now I don't need to be, going around and just, wreaking havoc on them, but you can even see over here, they're moving a little bit. And what that does is that knocks any debris off the plant leaves, and where debris sits is typically where algae wants to get rooted. So Could be as easy as adding an air stone, could be adding a circulation pump, could be just turning one of the nozzles on your canister filter, or let's say I had a hang-on back that was in this corner. If I put it to the center of the aquarium, maybe that helps a ton. But I would look at it from that standpoint. And, you know, in this little conversation, you could be like, well, I've got 40 power heads running. That's not the problem. Okay, it could be a food issue, something like that, but most commonly it is a circulation issue. Let's see. Any thoughts on Saswasser Tang in your tanks? I think it looks super cool. It's super duper easy to sell. It's also like a pain because it never attaches to anything for me. And I found that it grows absolutely best in darkness. So if you turn the light off and don't turn it on for 3 months, you'll have a ton of Saswasser Tang. Everything else dies off. And I haven't done enough tests to know, is it other plants were out competing the Saswasser Tang and that's why it never grew very fast? And it could grow in the low light, or does it actually like low light scenarios? But in a normal planted tank, it grows relatively slowly, but in pure darkness, wow, I swear it like tripled in size like every month. It was crazy. Like I was selling so much of it on Aquabit as a hobbyist from that trick. All right. Let's grab any tips for Embulia. I haven't played with Embulia for probably a couple years now. Embulia is a really fine leaf plant, and those are a double-edged sword in my opinion. They look awesome, and they look different than other plants, but it's like they catch everything. So I think the trick to Embulia is decent water flow, maybe like a lot of air stones, because it's gentle airflow, but a lot of movement, and then trimming and replanting on a periodic basis, because Embulia grows pretty darn quick. It's a great plant for breeding fish. But yeah, those are my tips for those. Let's see. Colton D says, what's in my aquarium co-op fertilizer that you sell? What makes it the best in my opinion? So what makes it the best in my opinion is that I've tried to eliminate as much guesswork as I can for the average hobbyist. And, you know, that might sound weird, like, well, shouldn't it have something else that someone else doesn't have? No, it doesn't, you know. So what I've done is I've worked with the public for a long time now, like 10 years on planted tanks. I've worked with you guys, and I've developed a formula that I think helps most people most times with the least barrier of entry. So for like 20 bucks, you get a pump head. So one pump is 10 gallons. We're already taking some of the accident out of, oh, I didn't realize I was overdosing or whatever, or I didn't want to get out a pipette and measure it, and so I don't dose as often as I should. So I think that's where I've gone right, and then I've got to pull it up so I quote the right things here, because I don't want to quote you guys incorrect things. But let me pull up my fertilizer, Easy Green. And I know, for instance, because I was helping someone troubleshoot on the Tank Talk group. They were running into potassium deficiency, they think, and were thinking they needed more potassium, and they're using Easy Green, which it seems like that would be hard to believe because I run a lot of potassium in it. So like for the potassium, for instance, Seachem Flourish Comprehensive, which is kind of their all-in-one type of thing, they run 1/3 of 1% of potassium. So very low potassium because they don't know the skill level and stuff like that, and they're making it very mild so that you could dose it really heavy. So from a standpoint of my own, it would be great if I made my solution very weak, and then I just tell you, like, dose it as much as you need to get the results you need. But most people would find they'd have to dose very hard, and if they only followed the directions, probably wouldn't have much success. So they have 1/3 of 1% of potassium. For instance, my solution is 3.89%. So way more potassium. But potassium is one of the biggest building blocks for a plant, and some of the easiest plants really love it. So that Easy Green is targeted towards easy plants. And so like Anubias and Java ferns and Bulbitis and things like that, they want a lot of potassium, so we give a lot of it. We also have a lot of nitrogen in our bottle as well, and it's because we believe for most people that are running a full-on planted tank, they're limited by nitrogen. You know, you might have 100 tetras in there, but the plants eat that up every day, every time you feed, so you need more nitrogen. And we kind of based this off of what we saw the problems arising in people's tanks. The most common thing we ran into was people be changing their water weekly because the internet tells you to do that. You've got plants, the plants are all struggling, and then when you test, there's no nitrogen in the water, and that's the number one thing plants need to grow. And, so we've tried to develop it where if you monitor your nitrates and you have any reasonable load, and you just dose based on those nitrates, everything else is in proportion to what you need. Now, if you run a ton of red plants or very, very high demanding plants, or your water naturally has an insane amount of potassium in it, you could run into a problem. But for most people, this is the blend that's going to work well for them. And at the point where you're injecting CO2, you have, escaped its winning competitions and all that, you're probably tweaking everything you want perfectly. Oh, I want a little bit more red, almost till it's purple on these, so I'm going to tweak this and that. This is mostly targeted for, I haven't had a plant at aquarium before, or I want it to be low maintenance. I just want to squirt some fertilizer in. I want it to work. That's the sales pitch, so to speak. So it's a sales pitch in that if you want something that's going to be easy and you want your tank to be low maintenance and just work, this product's for you. If you're going on full on, I want the most high-tech tank ever, this is not for you. You should use something much more advanced. But you really wouldn't be looking at this solution if you were. So let's grab some more questions. Keaton says, why has my Anubias had a flower bud on it but not opened after 2 months? So I'm just assuming it's just the green part sitting there. It might be taking, if it's not getting enough nutrients, taking a long time to form what's inside of it, possibly. But usually, Anubias flowers stay a lot longer than other flowers, like on a Pontigeton or something. It might go from nothing to open in under a week and dead again 3 days later, where it might take much longer. 2 months is kind of a long time. I don't know the amount of fertilizer that's going in, but that might help you. Let's see here. Will soil still work if I put sand on top of it? Kind of. The problem is, like, a very fine sand hinders root growth because it's so dense. That being said, once roots get down into that dirt, it would be able to help a heavy root feeder. The problem, in my opinion, is most plants aren't heavy root feeders. They're mostly water column feeders. So yeah, it is an easy thing. Like, setting up a dirted tank is pretty easy until you ever pull something up, and then it kind of makes a mess. And so I'm not going to say it's not useful, because in the right situation it is. But currently I don't run any of my tanks that way, and most people that I've seen do it a couple of times and go, I'd rather do it without. Let's see here. Oh, so what was the plant that I was talking about that is easy to sell and grows in darkness? Suswassertang. It's a Pellia. If I remember right in my research, it's like the male form of this liverwort that, as long as it stays in the male form, it stays fully aquatic. But when it I don't know, like it spawns or breeds, I don't know exactly how that liverwort works, but it becomes a fern above water. So it never happens in the aquarium though. But Suswassertang, it's not the easiest word to say or spell. Let's see here. Does more substrate equal healthier and bigger plants over time? I don't think so. I think a thin layer, I think the thinnest layer you could possibly use while keeping the plant well anchored is the healthiest, because it's going to allow the most nutrients to get down. It's going to allow the most oxygen, so you hopefully aren't building up hydrogen sulfide gases and things like that. So for me, I think the thinnest I can go is about 3/4 of an inch, and that's kind of hard. But normally I'm shooting about 1.5 inches or so, I would say, is where I like to be. But I've met aquarists that do very well, and they love 3 inches. It makes it very easy to plant. So I would say go with what works for you, but don't do more thinking it's just specifically better. Brian asks, if I have a heavily planted tank, can I skip fishless cycling the tank, since the plants will take care of the nitrites and nitrates. Basically, yes. I have a whole video in the Planted 101 tank series about cycling planted aquariums, and you're basically paraphrasing that video of, in theory, if you're getting really good plant growth, it would be able to consume ammonia and nitrite and nitrates very efficiently. That being said, don't go from nothing to 400 cardinal tetras. Like, how about we go from 0 to 20? A few weeks later, we go to 40. You know, if we know we're going to put 400 in eventually, but step it up, not just from 0 to full. Go, you know, take some steps there and make sure your aquarium is going to keep up with it. Jamie says, how vulnerable are plants to cold during shipping? Should I order now or wait till a warmer stretch? As long as they don't freeze, plants typically do okay. So it's kind of like outdoors. That first frost is deadly. And so typically they're not going to freeze. But for us personally, like here at the store with the shippers, soon we'll start using heat packs even on the plant shipments because we don't want it to freeze, right? Even though it's only going to be in there for 2 days, something like that. I'm confident that a heat pack will keep the heat off. It's only got to stay 33 or 34 degrees, and that's pretty easy to do. Even if it's 32 degrees out, the fact that it's going to be an insulated, bubble-wrapped envelope is already going to keep it a couple degrees warmer. So, but to answer your question, should I order now or wait till a warmer stretch? If it's not freezing, go ahead and order. If it is freezing, like if you're at 12 degrees already, like, well, you know, it's probably best to wait. At the same time, it'll probably make it there okay, you know. So it's all risk versus reward type of thing, you know. A lot of times I can't wait. Rob Jones says, I have a dirted tank. Will marine land LEDs work? Probably. You know, it depends on which fixture and what plants you want to grow. But if you're just growing, let's say, Crypts and Anubias and Java Ferns, almost any light on the planet will grow those. So, let's see here. Best plant for breeding fish and snails, not moss. Vallisneria, maybe? Maybe Vallisneria? Maybe Dwarf Sagittaria, maybe Water Sprite. Any of those are some of my go-tos. Let's see here. A 75-gallon with Eco Complete, good light and good ferts. 1 pot of jungle val. How long will it take to make your tank a jungle? A realistic guess is probably 8 months, I think. Because it's one of those, like, you're going to go from 1 pot, and then probably 6 weeks later you'd have 2 pots worth. But then 6 weeks after that you might have 6 pots worth. And then 6 weeks after that you're going to have like 30 pots worth. And so it really snowballs, but that beginning is super duper slow. And when it is jungled, you could probably take out 1/3 of it every 3 or 4 weeks and it'll fill itself back in. Like, there's no problem at all. It grows super dense once it's really going. Let's see here. Would Micranthum Monte Carlo carpet with stock lighting? I have a Fluval Accent 25-gallon. Only info I can find is the Fluval light has 104 lumens at the bottom of the tank. I don't know, Ham, because I don't know the lumens compared to par. So, not quite sure. Are you coming in or what? Let's see here. What's a good light for 65-gallon swordfish swordfish tank? No substrate. I use aqua soil and clay pots. I would say like the Fluval 2.0 would be a good one. You could use, if you're doing like ultra low light, you could just do Stingray, but 65-gallon tank's pretty tall, so I guess we did 30,000 subscribers, so we got to pay up. My wife's got to get on camera here. There's no chair, but you can stand here.
Am I supposed to like crouch down so I look like you?
Yeah. My wife, Katie, Dorkula in the flesh.
Oh my gosh, I'm just going to kneel. I'm an old lady.
All right. We'll keep answering questions, and maybe now we'll take some Dorkula questions too, since it's the end. But let me get back onto the chat here and scroll down because I'm sure people are... let's see here. FX4, too big on a 40 breeder? Probably. I mean, it could be done. I'd like it on a 55 better. My Amazon sword is growing several leaves off the same stem. Should I cut those back, or is it okay? Medium light root tabs? I'd say it's doing fine. Yeah, I would leave it. Let's see.
Someone just burned you.
Yeah, this one right here. I can't believe the goldfish tank's missing corkscrew valve. Well, it was never corkscrew valve. It was crinum calamastratum is what it was. And I just moved them to different tanks. So they're in the African cichlid tank now, and then in the tank that's quarantining all the plecos. And it's because it was getting a little too big for those goldfish, and I wanted to free up some room for them. So it's part of the planted tank. You got to make sure that you're not just letting things way, way, way overgrow. Everyone wants me to give you a chair. The problem is I can't give you a chair. I can give you my chair. I guess I could give you my chair. You could also sit on my lap, I suppose. That would work.
Oh my god, no way.
Well, we're almost done, so I just didn't want to...
It's going to be...
What's your favorite fish? That one's from Morgan. You can think about that one.
Okay, I'll think.
Well, keep thinking, because I'm going to go on.
Okay.
What constitutes high light, medium light, and low light? Usually it's par values, but no one agrees on what par. So, like, is 40 par? Is that the point where we're starting to get above medium light? Some people say it's 100 par. And so, I don't know, if there's a rule. There used to be kind of with T5s and stuff like that, but that's before we were really using par meters. You can read it too. Is quarantining necessary for plants? Are there diseases that can ride on them? Technically, yes. In practice, not really. I mean, really, if you're going to quarantine, you're probably quarantining if you didn't want snails or you were afraid of some algae. Yeah.
Well, can like dwarf hair grass and stuff go from one tank to the next on them?
Can dwarf hair grass go on? Yeah. So you could have contaminants too, like at the store we have a pot of, I want to say it's mermaid or sawtooth hygro that has some dwarf or pearlweed in it. And so if you didn't want pearlweed or java moss or something like that to get to your main tank, you could quarantine that way, yeah. Are you as into fish as I am?
No.
No. You still haven't even come up with your favorite fish yet.
Hank. Always.
Hank, so our first Mabu puffer.
And Bubby.
And Bubby, which was a red hump earth eater female.
She had giant lips. It was like they were Botox. It was fantastic.
Yep. Dorkula, what's Corey's best attribute?
When he really laughs.
I don't laugh very often, but true. I could see that.
It's hysterical.
Let's see here. Is there such thing as too much light? Definitely. I think we've got that going on in her tank at the moment. I've got 4 Fluval lights on it, and we keep getting green water a little bit, but we also need to get a little more reliable on the fertilizer. We haven't been reliable. Part of the problem is we got family in town.
Yeah.
So, her mom's here, her sister's here, and
Full
basically
house.
They're all staying here and until like January at least. So that kind of leads to the next thing is I think I'm dialing back how many videos I'm going to release for the next month or so to about 3 a week. And that's because I want to do some stuff with family and I want to focus on building a little bit more. And I know I've got taxes coming up at the end of the year, and that taxes for me is like 3 days of straight head in an Excel spreadsheet, checking everything,
he
making
gets like
plans.
A beard this long.
That's right.
And his eyebrows get all squiggly, and he goes kind of nuts.
I age about 5 years during tax, the end of your taxes. But so, bear with me a little bit. I'm gonna go down in videos. I say that. That being said, I'm already planning a 4 to 8 hour live stream on Thursday, which is Thanksgiving. But the goal is, I swear, to spend some more time with family and stuff while everyone's here, and then get back to the super grind afterwards. So
I may be on live stream for part of Thanksgiving.
I might even get you a chair.
Ooh, that's Thanksgiving. I have to work though. He doesn't. He planned out to be here.
So when is Dorkula gonna get a mud skipper now that she's appeared on camera?
I don't know. Maybe that'll be my secret Christmas gift.
Maybe so. Let's see. Are your tanks a big spotlight when the family are at my house? It's kind of weird, actually, because obviously they watch me sometimes on either Facebook or YouTube, and then they want to see it. And to me, I think it's like a super letdown because, if you're not into fish, you're kind of like, yeah, this is kind of on crazy level. But if you're like when I go visit someone else's fish room, it is the coolest thing ever.
Well, you spent like 6 hours in someone's room looking at 2 tanks.
Yeah, I could do that all day long, but when you have, when like family comes over and the kids want to see it or something, it's a little awkward, especially because I have like, oh, don't touch that fertilizer, like, oh, don't do that, but in general.
When Mom was looking at the big tank in the living room, she was like, why don't you have any of those fish I like? And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't know, those fish that have like the feathers for tails. And then she went into the fish room and she was like, oh, bettas. I want like a bunch of bettas in that tank.
So yeah, out of everything I own, a Dumbo betta is the coolest to her mom, which is fine. It's a good fish. So, all right, let's see if we can grab... how do you know if you're using too much light on plants? You could technically burn them and cause them to brown, but typically it's an imbalance between the amount of light and the amount of fertilizer. That's really the imbalance that happens. But you could put so much on it that like a Java fern just withers back, but that takes an insane amount. Let's see. Why does Bob get a chair but not Dorkula?
I was not planned.
That is the answer.
Bob was planned.
We talked about it and was like, hey, how about you just come on the live stream on Thursday, and that'd be great. So I don't have a chair because it looks weird on camera when there's an empty chair sitting here. And so now you're going, well, why don't you get a chair? Because this room is so small, you can't open the door wide enough to get a chair in here without moving this table. So literally this table has to move, open the door, get a chair in, move the table, close the door so we don't get too much noise pollution. And in theory, I was going to end like 5 minutes ago. So now, the longer this goes, the worse I'll look. But really, I should end it at any second. But I'm trying to get more and more questions in. So
at least he's not making me clean the tank while he's doing this.
Hey, I should be dual efficiency here. Let's see here. If the human pleco says, my tire track eel is gone, I checked everywhere, I can't find it, what should I do? There's probably not a lot you can do. If you can't find it, it's probably got out of your tank somehow. They're known to get out, unfortunately. Let's see. Fastest way to grow crypts. Not really a fast way. Good fertilizer, CO2 injection.
Oh, that's creepy.
Let's see here. That is creepy. An anime pillow with if I have no guess. Like, I should get a cardboard cutout of someone.
I know.
Let's see. Do I have prime interfere with plant fertilizers? Opinion on that? Only if the fertilizer is using a lot of urea, which mine's not utilizing in that, or doesn't utilize that. And typically the ones that do utilize that are targeted for lower pHs to where the urea isn't toxic. So in my experience, I haven't had much problem. You can read it.
How do you quarantine new plants?
So typically I don't quarantine new plants. I mean, all the plants at the store kind of go into their own plant tanks, but I don't really quarantine. And I personally have never run into that instance where people say, like, I bought a plant and it killed all my fish because of the pesticides that were sprayed on it from overseas. Like, I import every single week plants from overseas, and I've never once experienced that. I'm not going to say you couldn't experience that, but I tend to not do extra work on something I've never experienced because I've never even met someone where it's happened in person. I've read about it online, but yeah, so I'm not going to plan for something that I've never run into.
And how do you prepare driftwood from the beach for a freshwater tank? You have to boil it, right? Boiling
is usually the best one, but the other thing you got to watch out for is make sure it's the right type of wood. Some woods are super toxic with their sap, and I'm not very good at identifying wood, and when you're on the beach, you could have 15 different types, and you're going, oh, what type is this? I'm sure I know there's not a very good guide on the internet, but you can figure it out after some real searching. How do you tackle cyanobacteria in a planted tank? Use erythromycin. That's the easiest, surefire way. Get any big sheets of it you can off, but it is a bacteria, cyanobacteria, and erythromycin works for me basically every time. I put it in, put one dose in, let it sit for a week. That usually gets it. If that didn't get it, I would do a water change, one more dose, let it sit for another week, and that for sure has always gotten it for me. Let's see here.
That's a good one. Do mystery snails go dormant? Mine's not dead, but he doesn't come out of his shell, and it's been a week.
So usually what happens there, Hoxton, is for me in my water, if the water is too acidic or there's not enough hardness in there, when they come out of their shell, it's kind of burning their skin, so they just hold up in their shell hoping the water will get better. But usually in your aquarium it doesn't get better, it actually gets worse. The other times they'll do that, if you had it in there, and let's say you had a betta that was like biting its antenna all day long, it's going, okay, well, I'll hide out in the shell and hopefully that betta will swim off. The problem is in your aquarium it never swims off for long. And so I'd look at either A, is it getting harassed, or B, make sure your pH is at least 7.2, and you've got pretty good hardness in the water for those mystery snails. It could also just starve too. If they just get too hungry, they just kind of hold up and then they just starve out.
That's a good one. My fish keeps hiding all day in some broken ruins. How do I make it stop? Take out the ruins?
You could, depends on the type of fish. Like if it's a Raphael catfish, it might just hide there. So yeah, you could take out the ruins, but it's probably it's trying to avoid the light. But without knowing what type of fish, sometimes if you only have one hiding place in a tank, then fish will always stay there because they're so afraid. It's kind of like a parking spot. If you get the best parking spot outside of your work, you don't want to go anywhere for lunch because you're going to lose that rad parking spot. But if there was tons of parking, you have no problem going to grab lunch, coming back, so you know there's enough. And same thing in your tank. If there's only one place to park and there's 5 people trying to park, they're not leaving. And so that could be going on too. So if you had a bunch of caves, you might go, wow, the fish are out and about all the time. Now that happens a lot with African cichlids. Either take away all the caves or put in a ton of caves and you'll get the same behavior out of both of them probably. Do I dip plants for snails or algae? I definitely do not. I actually like the plant, or I like snails, and the algae typically doesn't get a foothold if your aquarium is balanced. So if it was unbalanced, yep, that can be bad. But algae itself, usually I've got algae crew in the tank, and it'll get eaten, and the snails I welcome them. Let's see, lots of what's up, Dorkula.
What's up? I just pulled a Corey.
That's right.
Nice.
What are the weird reddish tiny organisms just above the waterline in my 10-gallon planted tank? And should you use an air pump in a planted tank? They're probably what I call little water fleas, and I find them especially on top of water lettuce and stuff, and they'll just bounce on top of the water. Sometimes if I have killifish, they just eat them all and they won't exist, but if I only have tetras and stuff down low, they just live up there. Not harmful to the plants or anything that I can tell. And I always pretty much use an air pump in a planted tank because I want the circulation. And then I'm the crazy guy that believes that it adds CO2 to the water, which, you know, if we can dissolve oxygen in by pumping oxygen in, we can also dissolve CO2. So if the plants use up all the CO2 and it's sitting at no CO2 left in the water, if I bubble in oxygen, most of that, what's coming in, is actually CO2. So it adds CO2 to the water if we've already depleted it. So I find it to be very beneficial. Let's see. Any plans on starting a cooking channel?
I don't have your skills. And I work a lot.
So is that a no?
Probably not. I don't know. I made some really good cookies today.
You did. I ate one right before I came on the live stream. Any root tabs worth it? Is Excel worth it? Is it really dangerous to overdose? For some fish, overdosing really bad. Is it really dangerous? I wouldn't say it's super dangerous. It could actually be hard on some plants too, but it's also hard on algae. And are root tabs worth it? Only if you're feeding plants that need it. So crypts, sword plants, maybe you want to give just a plant a boost. Even a stem plant that gets most of its nutrients from the water can get a little boost from the thing. So it's a relatively small expense, I would say.
Would those be good for vacation too, if you're going on vacation?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, you have to be an extended vacation, but yeah, you could put some root tabs in if you were going to not be there to dose. Yeah, that could be a thing. Let's see. Yeah, what is for dinner? Do you know?
Sloppy Joes.
Oh, yeah.
My mom makes awesome Sloppy Joes, so whenever she's here, Corey says she has to make some. So he's basically just been eating Sloppy Joes all day.
Yes. Have I ever kept native species such as sunfish? Not sunfish in particular, but right now I do have some of the rainbow shiners.
Didn't we catch some in Florida?
I don't think we caught...
Or did someone else?
We caught the pygmy sunfish, like the Evergladesii, but Yeah. Let's see here. Skinny fish, that's kind of appropriate for your question. It says, I have a question. My guppies have not been themselves lately. They seem to be passing clear poo. I don't know what's going on with them. It sounds like they have internal tapeworms. Something like some general cure would probably fix that. I say probably because clear poo can also be stress and things like that, but most commonly it's internal parasite. So yeah.
How do I move attached to lily bulbs without damaging them?
Mostly you just got to pull them up, and their roots that are spread out really far are kind of going to just like lift up kind of like a net, and that's all you can really do. And if they're really big lily pads, a lot of times I'll cut those back before I move it. Let's see here. Jason finally got to visit my store yesterday.
Nice.
Awesome. What was I doing yesterday? Oh, I was building plant racks because we ordered so many plants that they're sitting kind of loose in the aquariums, the extra aquariums. So I was building plant racks. I got to finish that up soon.
What about, can I use Seachem? So can I use Seachem Discus Trace as a fertilizer in a pinch?
Kind of, yeah. It would kind of work similar to like Seachem's trace elements, because that's mostly what Discus Trace is going to be, is the trace elements. So yeah, it wouldn't add much nitrogen or calcium or anything like that. But yeah. Should I run an air stone even if I have a sponge filter? I don't think you need to do that. If your sponge filter has the option of putting an air stone in it, go ahead and do that. It makes it a little more efficient, but I don't know that you need to run both in addition to each other.
Okay, I have to give a shout out. Hi, Stephanie.
It's one of my friend's wife, and her friend is shocked to see her on the live stream. So, what's my favorite shrimp? What's your favorite shrimp?
I do love bumblebee. What are those black and white ones? Are those
Crystal shrimp?
Yeah, I love crystal shrimp and bumblebees and red. I mean, just the...
Yeah, I think
I love all shrimp.
Cherry shrimp are my favorites.
Yeah.
What's a good bushy plant for the focal point of an aquarium?
What's that big one that I have in my tank? I can't remember.
You have a Pontigeton bovinianus.
And that gets pretty big.
It does.
And it does flower.
Yep. I would say that's a perfectly fine choice. You can get that in our like plant packs we send out, but we don't send it because I can't get them all the time, and I think they would sell out super quick. Yeah.
And what's the plant that you love? I can't remember.
The plant that I love.
That I don't have in my tank that you're like crying about. I can't remember.
I don't remember which one I was crying about lately.
I don't know.
Let's see here.
Do Cory cats ever eat snails? I've got an albino and a pygmy varieties, and suddenly there are empty snail shells all over.
So I don't think I've ever seen them eat the snails. I mean, maybe in like an apocalypse situation where there's no food to be found, but my guess, what nature would do is they're eating too much of the food, and that's causing the snails to starve out since they're the slowest feeders. So,
can I just say, I really don't need a chair. It's no big deal. I don't care. It's just going to be really obnoxious for us to get up and then turn around and then move and then all sit down. It's just going to be bizarre. So, it's
Fair
totally
enough.
fine.
Let's see here.
What? That's a bad excuse. Hacker game.
Uh-oh.
Ugh, you're breaking my heart.
I have wisteria and embulia growing in my tank, but they keep getting green algae. Do you think I'm providing my plants with too much light? Could be too much light or not enough nutrients. It's probably an imbalance between the two. It could also technically be not enough circulation in there as well. Let's see here. Are you going to shout this person out?
Sure. Turtles tanks.
There you go.
Hello.
Oh.
Pregnant mollies. I love pregnant fish. So I have a pregnant molly in my 29-gallon community. Should I move it to a separate tank for the fry to survive? The tank is heavily planted with intake sponges. I mean, they could do that, but they could put a couple spawning mops and stuff in there too if they're really worried about it, right?
Yeah, the more cover you have. I wouldn't move it because it sounds like if it's actually heavily covered or heavily planted, which my definition of that is typically different than most people. If it's like super dense, it should be just fine.
And mollies procreate like rabbits, right? I mean,
yeah.
They just pop out babies like
yeah,
every
they were the
5
first
minutes.
ones, the first fish we ever bred.
I know. I was super excited.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dorkula, did you like fish before Cory, or is it forced on between the relationship?
Well, you got into him like, what, 5 years after we started dating?
I don't know.
5 years, 6 years? I don't know. We've been together for a really long time. No, he literally, I just came home with my mom while she was here visiting. I walked up the stairs, and in our bedroom, there was a 60-gallon getting set up. And that was basically the start of it. But I mean, I've always loved, like, you know, we have our Sassy and Wincy, our 2 dogs that we love. And I mean, we'd have more animals, but we're not home enough. And I'm totally fine with it. I'd much rather him be into fish than a lot of other things. So he enjoys it. And also, fish poop is very good for the skin.
That's right.
So he's got very smooth skin.
That's right. What's the most expensive fish I've ever owned? Was it worth the price? Probably my albino silver arowana. Was it worth the price? Probably not. I used it more as like a publicity thing, like check it out. You don't see one of these every day. But I'm not huge on the arowanas, so.
Hello, Flynn.
That's right. Flynn's got an interview coming out. He's the one that got me a Taco Bell gift card.
Yes.
So.
Corey was so excited. His eyes were like in little shapes of tacos when he came home. No joke. He was pretty stoked.
Ooh, discus and plants that can live at 89 degrees. I don't think I have any experience at 89. I know Bacopa and stuff will do really well at 86, but when you start getting that 86, 87, 88, 89, 1 degree can make a huge difference. So I don't want to tell you, like, buy a bunch of this and it totally dies off. So I think I'm calling it. What do you think? You want to keep going?
No, I think we've gone quite a while.
All right. So I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. Don't forget, plants are 20% off.
That's
when? Well, 24 hours from when I started. So, like, till 5-ish tomorrow. Like, we want to get everything packed and shipped, so it's hopefully landing before Thanksgiving, so you can spend all Thanksgiving avoiding your family and planting.
And watching you.
And watching me. I forgot about that. Watch me on Thanksgiving, because I'll be here. Maybe you'll be here for a little bit. Maybe we'll get you a chair.
Oh, so fancy.
Yeah, we'll pull out all the stops and get 2 chairs going. What else? Yeah, so I don't know. I know I'm not putting out a video tomorrow, just because, and I think the schedule is going to be something like Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, so there'll be 3 videos happening those days, and then Sunday will also be a live stream. So you'll wake up Sunday morning, you'll get a video, and then you will join the live stream later in the day, that type of thing. We'll see how that goes for a little while, see if I can make some magic happen and actually go to the movies with you, so I don't just instantly have to say that I have to work.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We get to go to the movies like once every 2 years.
Yeah, so I thought, you know what, let's do that so I can spend some time with the family while they're here. And yeah, so buy plants, hang out with me on Thursday. There's going to be a lot of deals, too. I still got to write them all down, but I'm thinking like a deal every hour on the website. I've seen the
cheat sheet. It's pretty epic.
Yeah, and if you're following on Instagram, you saw, something like, man, that's a lot of Fluval lights and things like that. So we're going to... Oh, I forgot the last promo. It's been going. If you guys aren't following on Facebook, you don't know, but all Rapashi Foods 25% off until the end of today.
Oh, snap.
So a lot of you already been buying it, but for those of you that aren't already following on Facebook, you're missing out on some deals, too, because... Basically, the platforms I'm on, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, there's different stuff happening all over, and if you're not kind of watching multiple things, you're going to miss out a little bit, but...
You post some secret photos on Twitter, too.
Yeah, every once in a while. So, anyway, I think that's going to do it, and, we'll see you next time. A little bit shorter thing, and, yeah. So that's plants. Hopefully we answered a lot. If you had non-plant related questions, and you desperately need help, like a sick fish, leave it on a comment on another video, or when this uploads, go ahead and leave a comment, and I will get to it. It just takes me a little bit, but I do want to help you guys, but I want to try this formatted structure here, so. All right, let me find the right screen. I can't find the right screen to save
Whatever,
my
should I
soul.
just start waving?
That's right. Bye,
guys!
That's right, you make me look good while I screw up. All right, there we go. I can click that button, and the second button